Today we're going to be showing you how to snorkel the Ranger Polaris XB 800 EFI. We sort of got a head start by removing the seat. You want to go ahead and remove the base seat and the backing seat. After setting those aside, you want to go ahead and tilt your bed up to where we can get access to all the stock snorkels that we'll be removing. After removing the back seat, you'll notice that your belt housing intake will be attached to that. You want to also go ahead and take the hose clamp off of this and go ahead and remove this piece. The next piece that we're going to be removing is the belt exhaust. That'll be on the other side of the machine, which is right here. You'll go ahead and detach that also and take your belt exhaust snorkel out. We're going to go ahead and remove the existing snorkel from the airbox to the trap system behind the passenger seat. There's a black rubber hose that needs to be disconnected from here and the airbox. At this time, remove it. It's time to take your dielectric grease pack. You want to dielectric grease all of your electrical connections, including your 2 spark plugs at the engine and the 2 plug-ins where they go to the coil. Also, you have some electrical fittings underneath the driver's seat. You want to go ahead and remove this container to where you can get to this coil to dielectric grease those items there. Moving to the rear of the bike, you have a couple of plugs back here, right there, right there. Anything that has an electrical fitting on it, you want to go ahead and take apart, apply a little bit of dielectric grease, and make sure when you put it back together, you hear the snap. Also, you want to come to the front of the machine. You want to pop your hood, and you should have a few under there also. Underneath the hood, behind the battery, you'll see a large plug back there that will need to be dielectric greased. You also have your main fuse box. You want to pull the cap off, remove all the fuses, and make sure that you dielectric grease that real good. Again, anything that is electrical on this machine needs to be dielectric greased. In this kit, you're going to have 2 bellows. One is going to go at the rear diff and transmission, which is together, and the other one is going to go into the front diff in the front of the machine underneath the hood. We've already installed these. It should look something like this at the rear machine. This is your back diff transmission. What we did was ran this through the frame and attached our bellow. When the transmission and back diff wants to breathe, it'll get it out of this bellow system. When it releases, it comes back open. We'll go ahead to the front of the machine and show you what we did there. We ran our line up here from the front diff. You want to go ahead and run it through this mender here and put it on the end of this hose. Same thing, when the front diff wants to breathe, it'll get it from the bellow. While we're at the front of the machine, we'll go ahead and remove the overflow bottle cap. In your kit, you will have a brass barb. What we did was went ahead and drilled a hole into the top of this, applied the brass barb with some silicone. Do that just like that. You want to put it back on the cap, and we'll show you what to do with the hose in just a little while. In your kit, you will have some clear hose. What we're going to do is we're going to attach that on the end of your overflow bottle, and we're going to run this hose up the frame right here and make 2 to 3 complete loops zip tie it onto this frame and point it down. I'll show you a picture after I get through with that. Okay, the reason for this loop system, what we do is we run it up and we make a couple of loops around this frame, and then we point the end down. This will allow the overflow to breathe or to spew out any radiator fluid if necessary. Now the loop system will keep water from traveling back into your overflow. You don't want to get any type of mud, water, or sand or grit in there. So that's what that should look like. This is going to replace your stock crankcase hose. We're going to go ahead and take this to the machine now. We're going to pull the existing crankcase hose off the top of the engine here. When you do that, you want to go ahead and remove this plastic piece. You want to clean it up and put it back on with silicone. That way water won't get into that area. At the back, on your air box, you want to go ahead and remove this crankcase hose. You want to take this hose out and replace it with this crankcase. I'll go ahead and install that. We're looking at the driver's side of the air box. We went ahead and connected our crankcase hose to the air box. We ran it to the front of the machine. We made 2 full loops. You want to go ahead and put some zip ties top and bottom and possibly to the frame to keep it in place, going to the front of the engine. Now what this is for, guys, is if you ever get water in your air box with the stock system, it's going to run right out of your air box right into your engine, which will cause your engine to have water in it. This loop system will prevent that from happening. So you want to make sure you get this done properly. The next item that we're going to be installing is for your fuel line. This is a T system. Same thing, it doesn't allow any water to get into your fuel tank. We've already installed it on the machine and I'll walk you through it. The stock fuel tank is going to have a clear line. You want to go ahead and hook that to the T that has nothing attached to it. This is the drain in case the fuel tank ever wants to spit out any type of fuel. This is a one-way check valve. It'll only allow fuel out. What you want to do with the other side is you want to run it underneath the passenger seat and you want to run it up the pole to about head height, and you should be safe up there. This is going to be our air box drain plug. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the air box lid. We're going to go to the bottom center. We're going to put our finger on it. You want to go ahead and disconnect the air lid, and you want to take where your finger is. You want to put an X there, and we're going to drill and tap it in right. You're going to take a 3/8 drill bit and you're going to drill your mark. After you put your hose barb in, you want to go ahead and put your hose on, and it's time to put the airbox lid back on. What you want to do is put a fine line of silicone around this lid before putting it back on. But the number one important thing is you want to replace this air filter. If for some reason this paper air filter is to ever get wet, you have to go home. There's no drying this thing out. It's paper. We recommend using a K&N air filter or some sort of foam style filter that you can take out and dry out pretty easily. Once you've installed your airbox lid, you want to run this to the driver's side of the frame. Go ahead and get a zip tie to where your drain plug will be accessible while you're on the trail. Your belt also has a drain plug. You should be close to both of your drain plugs at this point of the machine. Now that we have the belt housing off, what we like to do is remove the rear clutch and the front clutch to get to this back housing. What we do is we pull this off the engine and make sure that you put silicone around the spots that touch the engine so that your belt won't leak. If you don't have a clutch tool to pull the clutch, you will not be able to do this step.
What we're going to do next is seal the back of the belt housing. Now, from the factory, there are no rubber seals on here, so it will be necessary to take you a good quality silicone and silicone these 3 bolt holes because they mount directly against the metal housing. Plastic to metal won't seal. So we're going to apply sealant here, all the way around this, and on the inside of this lip, you can see this cavity that's kind of dug out around here. You want to put a good bead of silicone all the way around this entire housing. At this point, we've reinstalled the rear belt plate that goes up against the housing in the engine. Now what we've done is reinstalled all the bolts that hold that on, and what we're going to do next is install the rear clutch. Now there are some shims on that rear shaft there. You want to make sure that you have all those back on there. That provides the correct alignment for the clutch. As you slide the clutch onto the shaft, there is a slot that will mate up with. Make sure you line that up, and it will slide all the way up against there before reinstalling the bolt. We've installed the rear clutch, tightened the bolt that holds that on, and we're now ready to install the front clutch assembly. There's no alignment shaft on that one. That's actually a tapered shaft, so that should line up. Reinstall the bolt that holds that in.
What we do now is install the belt. I always like to put the letters facing me. Put it on the front. Then what you want to do is you want to just roll this till it gets tight. Once it gets good and tight, you want to take something that's made of rubber. You want to place it in the top, and you just want to tap this down a little bit to stretch the rear clutch. Once you do that, you should just roll motion, and your belt should go right on. From factory, your intake on your belt housing comes through the frame. What we did is we took our plate that goes on the top of our risers. You want to go ahead and move them to the right hand side of the machine. You want to mark these 2 areas and drill 2 holes there into the frame. You want to make sure you have the proper clearance. You don't want to go too far. The length between the stock hole and our new hole is right at 4 1/2, 4 3/4. Okay, it's time to snorkel the intake on the belt housing. What you're going to do is take your white piece of PVC and you're going to slide it down this hose. You don't want to force it, but you'll slide it down till it gets to that bend. It'll go ahead and stop right there. You want to take your 2-inch hose and slide it on top of there. You want to put a hose clamp on this side and a hose clamp on that side. It'll go ahead and seal this area a little bit better. I would recommend doing that. We have the belt exhaust. You're going to have a side that has fern cones. You want to go ahead and come through the front. Right underneath the frame mender, you'll see, we'll come to the back, that fern cone is going to fit right there. We're going to go ahead and put that on and fasten it. The next step what we're going to be working on is your air box. Now we have quite a few pieces in here for your air box depending on the year of your machine. If your machine is a 2010, you're going to need these two pieces here. And the video will kind of show you how to rearrange that and put this pipe through your frame, and then your hose is going to go on just like that. Now, if it's a 2011, you want to go ahead and remove this piece all alone. Also a 2012. A 2011 is going to be a 90. That goes right onto the side of your air box. You can turn that up slightly and attach that portion to your hose going into the middle of your frame where you drilled your hole. Now, in 2012, they completely changed the air box. So what we're going to do in 2012 is we're going to completely take this fern coat off. We're going to add our piece onto this 90 here. Once you add this piece, what you're going to do is flip this fern coat. You want the smaller side on this 90. You want the larger side on your air box. Once you have that on your air box, you want to slide it to where the position that you need to have it. Run your hose through the frame and attach it on this end. It's always good to use a little bit of silicone anytime you're attaching the hose to the PVC pipe.
Before we run our belt housing exhaust, we're going to go ahead and install our air box. What you're going to do is take this fitting first, and you're going to attach it to the air box. You're going to go ahead and hose clamp that, and then you're going to take your bar here. You're going to slide this down and make sure you make a good contact there. If you feel comfortable, you can put a little bit of pipe dope on there, but only put a dot on each side to where if you do need to disassemble this, you can go ahead and twist it off and remove it. We're going to hook the hose here and put some hose clamps on it. We're back at the belt exhaust. Now it's time to run the hose through your frame. You want to go ahead and curve this in between your crankcase loop system, underneath your throttle body, and immediately up through the frame. You want to make sure that this is a tight fit. You don't want to get it too close to your exhaust on this side. This is a very high temperature point. You don't want to get the hose too close to that. After you run it under your throttle body, you come through your frame, and at this point you should have 3 2-inch hoses ready to be mounted onto your plate. What we're going to do is we're going to take our plate and we're going to put it in the front middle of our bed. We've already pre-trimmed the bed here, but what you can do is you can use the plate to put it in the center. The plate is also designed to sit right below the weld. That should be the point of interest here of how high you should go with this plate and where you should drill your holes. Like I said, the plate should be right level with the bottom weld to the right. You want to go ahead and make your lines, mark your lines on each side. You want to make sure after you trim that you leave the round lip forward. You don't want to go all the way down to the bottom here because that will show. Our plate goes past this lip here, so you want to make sure that you keep a little round lip on this side. We're going to pop the bed up and show you what it looks like on the other side. You'll notice that your bed has a bunch of these tubes. This is for support. When you trim your bed, this middle tube will need to come out to make a clean look. Also, we removed the piece that comes in the front here. You want to go ahead and before trimming, you want to remove this piece out. Okay? We recommend, this doesn't come in the kit, but when we made this cut, it left the center of this bed a little looser than what we like to have it. So what we did at the shop here is we just designed a plate to fit in there, and we'll put a couple of screws in there to put a little bit more strength in between this middle area. Okay, what we have is the front skirting of the tailgate. You want to go ahead and mark to make your trim here. From the top of the skirting down 7.5 inches, we put a mark here. You want to mark 7.5 inches at this cut, 7.5 inches at that cut, pop you a line across, and trim your notch. What we did and went ahead and installed our plate. You'll have 2 nuts and bolts. You want to go ahead and install it. Your holes should be a little slotted to where you can take your leveler and make sure that your plate is nice and level. The best thing to do is maybe put it on a flat spot of the machine. Make sure the machine's sitting on level ground, and then check your level up here. Alright, what we're going to do is take our 2-inch hose nipple. You want to go ahead and put your washer on. You want to leave about, I would say, 4 to 6 threads on this. You can adjust it at later. You're going to go ahead and put this into your hose. You're going to tighten your hose clamp up. And then we're going to put all 3 into the plate. We're going to now put the stacks onto the plate. What you want to do is keep your 90s off until all 3 stacks are tightened. Then we'll put our plate here, and then we'll put our 90s on top. We're going to go ahead and show you how to install onto the plate. You want to go ahead and grab the bottom of the hose with your hand. You want to screw those on until they're good and tight. We're going to go ahead and do all 3 of those and take some pictures. Now that we have all 3 of our risers good and snug, it's time to slide on the spacing bracket. This will be a very tight fit. You don't want to put it past the paint. You want to just get it on, and then we'll take our 90s and use our 90s to slide it all the way down. What you're going to do is just slide all 3 of them loosely. You want to make sure that you line them up all straight. Once you get them good and straight, you want to get in the machine and give them a little tap on top just to get all 3 of them down. Okay, there's a few other things we want to explain to you. We went ahead and installed our skirting after our trim. Again, this diamond plate is what you're looking at. It's just something we added on this kit just for a little bit of support in the bed. After putting your skirt back on, you want to go ahead and check for clearance. Once you see that you have your clearance there, your final product should look like this. Your bed is 100% accessible. Your hoses should be similar to that. If they are a little long, in our case they were, you want to just go ahead and take a razor blade and trim them up a little bit so that they're good and snug, so they're not loose. We're going to go ahead and put the seats back in, and this should be it for the Ranger 800 EFI XP edition.